Next News. Breaking news.
Tonight, the real Cuba story is not just that the lights went out. It's that Washington is starting to talk like the entire communist system may be beyond repair. Think about that. An island just 90 miles from Florida, sitting in darkness, run by a military-linked economic machine, with Secretary Marco Rubio now saying the people in charge may not be capable of the reforms needed to stop the collapse. What does that tell you? That tells you that very soon we may see an invasion of Cuba, much like we saw with Nicolas Maduro. Now, this is not routine foreign policy talk. That's a warning flare. And if the Trump administration believes that Cuba's failure is structural, not temporary, then the question changes very fast. What happens when survival is no longer the assumption? See, this is where the stakes get very real for America. The blackout that's happening right now across Cuba matters, not just because of the dramatic images. Blackouts are a symbol of something deeper: failing infrastructure, empty state coffers, collapsing public confidence in a regime that cannot deliver the basics of modern life. Secretary Rubio is making the point with usual clarity. He says Cuba is not truly run by a normal civilian government at all, but by GAISA, a military holding company that reportedly dominates huge sections of the economy while ordinary Cubans suffer. That means the issue is bigger than who gives the speeches in Havana. The issue is who controls the money, the assets, the system itself, and the Trump administration is framing this exactly right. A failed communist state 90 miles from our shore is not just Cuba's problem. It is a national security concern for the United States, especially when Rubio also points to Cuba's long record of supporting radical terror networks and hosting hostile intelligence activity. Now, before we go further, I need you to pay attention, because protecting your family from bureaucratic chaos, it matters here at home as well. If you or someone in your family is on Medicare, then this directly affects your wallet. Medicare is confusing by design. The mailers, the robocalls, the fine print, the commercials, it's all built to keep you overwhelmed, so you pick a plan and you never look at it again. That's the Medicare confusion industrial complex, and seniors are paying for it without even realizing it. See, Chapter is simple by design. One call, one advisor. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your needs, then help you compare plans very clearly. And some people could save more than $1,100 a year just by reviewing the coverage. Don't assume your current plan is your best plan. Call Chapter at 910-728-4109. That's the number you see right there on your screen. And get real help from someone who actually works for you. Now back to the Cuba story, because what Rubio said next may be the clearest signal yet of where this is all heading. See, this is what the corporate media will try to blur out. Rubio's not talking like this is a temporary shortage or a one-off emergency. He's talking about a structure that may be fundamentally broken, and he flatly said that the system needs serious reform and that he does not believe that the current people in charge are capable of delivering it. That's a massive tell. Once officials start talking less about patching the crisis and more about whether the regime itself can survive, you are no longer in normal diplomacy. You are now in transition territory. At the cabinet meeting last week, Secretary Rubio made it very clear, and I've got some clips here. This is from the cabinet meeting, but what happened in the halls of Congress today with Rubio squaring off against the Democrats was explosive. But he said that Cuba is in a lot of trouble. That's the pretext. Listen.
Cuba's in a lot of trouble because, unfortunately, for them, it's run by a bunch of incompetent communists. And being communist is bad. Being an incompetent communist is like the worst. And but the country's been taken over by this company called GAISA that basically controls 70% of the economy. None of the money in that company goes to help the Cuban people. None of it. So we'll be talking to them. We'll be working on it. You know, we want something good for the Cuban people, and hopefully there'll be a good outcome there for them. There needs to be. It's 90 miles from our shores, and having it a failed state 90 miles from our shores is a threat to the national security of the United States.
Cuba's next, folks. I'm telling you. Rubio calling Cuba a failed communist state sitting 90 miles off our shore. Now he drills down on the machine behind the misery, the military conglomerate GAISA, which he says controls virtually everything. This is directly from the Department of State today.
I mean, Cuba's a very different thing, yeah. I mean, I think the misnomer about Cuba, or the misunderstanding about Cuba, Cuba's actually not controlled by the government. Cuba's controlled by a military holding company named Gaesa. And Gaesa virtually owns anything. They own the tourist sector, they own mining, they own the gas stations, they own everything. They generate about 70% of Cuba's GDP is under the control of this military company. And they're sitting on between 14 and 17 billion dollars in assets. So you have people literally starving, people literally like power grid that hasn't been maintained in 10 years. And yet you have this holding military company sitting on these assets. And by the way, not a penny of the money in the military holding company translates over to the public treasury. So the fundamental challenge we have here is that Cuba needs to be, in order for it not to continue to be a failed state, which poses a threat to the United States, they need systemic and serious reform. They need to have economic reforms. And the question is, can they possibly reform, given the people who are currently in charge, both of Gaesa and of their government? And I think the answer is they can. I really don't believe this system is capable of reform unless new people take over.
Unless new people take over. So it's not just bad government. Rubio says the real power sits with the military empire hoarding billions while Cubans go hungry. Next, he goes a step further and says the system won't change unless new people take over.
So the fundamental challenge we have here is that Cuba needs to be, in order for it not to continue to be a failed state, which poses a threat to the United States, they need systemic and serious reform. They need to have economic reforms. And the question is, can they possibly reform, given the people who are currently in charge, both of Gaesa and of their government? And I think the answer is they can. I really don't believe this system is capable of reform unless new people take over or a new mindset takes hold. Now, we've engaged in conversations with them. We've offered them what I think needs to happen in order for their economy to recover. And that's the last point I would make, because I think somebody raised this issue of oil blockade. Cuba was having blackouts well before January 3rd of this year. They were having blackouts for years. And they were having blackouts for two reasons. Number one, no one will give you free oil except Maduro. That's what's changed here. What's changed here is they're no longer getting free oil from Venezuela. And number two, the main reason why they have energy blackouts is because they didn't invest a single dollar back into their plants, back into improving their plants. And they could have bought this equipment from any company in the world, but they didn't invest in it. Instead, they invested it to build tourist hotels that now sit empty because there's no tourism into Cuba. So Cuba's a little bit more complicated than Venezuela, but it's a mess.
It's a mess. His message blunt: the regime can't fix itself. Next, he lays out why this isn't just tyranny at home. He says Cuba has spent decades backing left-wing terror across the entire hemisphere.
Cuba has sponsored terrorism. It's supported groups. For example, virtually every left-wing, radical, violent terrorist group in the Western Hemisphere has at some point relied on support from Cuba. The ELN, the FARC dissidents, including them, have been involved there. We also know, for example, that Cuba continues to host a pretty substantial collection intelligence sites on behalf of the Chinese and the Russians. But you look at the region and you look at all of these leftist Marxist terrorist organizations, all of them, in many cases, got their seed money from the Cubans.
The case is clearly being made by Marco Rubio that the invasion of Cuba is imminent. And that is why Cuban state media is reporting that revolutionary naval units held coastal missile and combat diving drills to repel any potential future U.S. invasion. Check this out. This is from Cuban State News.
As part of the ongoing combat readiness training of the Revolutionary Navy, coastal missile units successfully carried out a practical exercise within the Sandino Cabañas defense zone of the Mariel municipality, specifically aimed at engaging enemy landing craft. This maneuver effectively put the strategy for these specific scenarios into practice. Furthermore, a combat diving and coastal missile firing exercise was also conducted, meticulously reproducing the most complex conditions of a real-world situation. In this way, the engagement provided the combatants with the opportunity to prepare themselves in the precise direction and execution of fire under highly demanding operational conditions. This crucial action ensures they acquire the essential experience required to effectively confront any military aggression.
Onward to victory. Always!
So, Cuban propaganda. The drills may look tough, but back on the island, the regime can't even keep the lights on. This next report shows Cuba hit by total blackout with the power grid collapsing across the entire country. Representative Hugh Blackwell, just in total blackout across all of Cuba, the entire island, virtually zero electricity as U.S. oil and energy blockade tightens. Power plants dead, streets dark, regime in panic.
Now at Havana, Cuba, where the power is out across the entire island, according to local officials there. Cuba is under a U.S. energy blockade. It has not had any oil shipments in 3 months. Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel reporting live on the huge changes and the difficult situation.
Difficult situation indeed. Watch the oil tankers. That's what I've been told. Watch for the Russian oil tankers. So while the communist regime stages war games and its grid falls apart, the big question is what a real confrontation would look like. Next up, a breakdown of Cuba's actual military strength. 50,000 troops, aging aircraft, Soviet junk, and well, the aftermath could be the real fight. On paper, it's not a fight. In practice, it could be a quagmire, says Mario Nafal.
Tonight, the chief of Cuba's armed forces joining military drills on the island in the face of increasing U.S. pressure. Questions tonight about Cuba's level of preparation for possible U.S. military action. Here's Cristina Vasquez.
Our military capabilities, as we have seen, even in Iran and other places, are very strong.
And if the U.S. is weighing military intervention in Cuba, Local 10 Cuba analyst Dr. Andy Gomez told us this about the communist island's military.
They have 30 airplanes, all MiGs, about 3,000 all equipment, tanks, personnel movement, 50,000 regular soldiers. That's pretty small.
Aging Soviet-era equipment, explained FIU's Defense and National Security Research Vice Provost, Dr. Brian Fonseca.
If they were to do a smash-and-grab kind of operation like they did with Nicolas Maduro, they would probably meet very little resistance.
But one wild card, he says, is if there is a pronounced U.S. presence on the ground, the potential of a guerrilla warfare strategy from militias comprised of Castro regime loyalists.
It has to be careful it doesn't engage the Cuban people. And that might, bring the Americans into a more pronounced conflict. And that would be a disaster for domestic policy, too, especially as we lead into the November 26 midterms.
And as high-stakes negotiations between the U.S. and Cuba appear to stall, Cuban officials say they are prepared to defend themselves.
Survive through repression, censorship, fear.
As U.S. leaders continue to make the case for intervention.
The desire for freedom has never disappeared.
That's Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez speaking at an event at Miami-Dade College hosted by World Affairs Council of Miami's Aaron Rosen.
Cuba would not really be able to match up to the United States in a one-to-one conflict. However, if the U.S. and Cuba did find itself at war and the U.S. decimated Cuba's military, it would very soon find that it inherits Cuba's political future. And there are very big open questions about what that might mean for what comes next.
This as public opinion on this issue remains polarized. While surveys here in South Florida found the majority of Cuban Americans support U.S. military intervention in Cuba, national polling has found the majority of Americans do not. Glenna?
Christina, thank you.
And that is the local news there. So, what does it all really mean? It means that the Trump administration appears to be looking at Cuba and seeing not an isolated blackout, not another propaganda cycle, but a communist system rotting from the inside out. Rubio's framing is the key. National security, governance, economic control, and long-term stability. That is the new center of gravity. And when he says that Cuba needs serious systemic reform and doubts that current rulers can pull it off, the message is obvious. Washington is weighing the possibility that the regime can't fix itself. The military drills out of Havana may generate headlines, but they also look like panic theater from a crumbling dictatorship. The real fight's not over missiles or slogans, it's over whether Cuba's power structure can endure another round of failure without breaking apart. So the bottom line is this. The darkness over Cuba is not the story by itself. The darkness is the symbol of communist failure, regime corruption, and institutional decay just off America's coast. President Trump's administration is right to treat that as a serious U.S. concern, and Secretary Rubio is saying out loud what too many weak-kneed diplomats refuse to admit for years. This problem is structural. If Gaisa controls the wealth, if the regime cannot keep the power on, if the people are starving while the military-linked elite sit on billions, then this is not a reform issue around the edges. It's a legitimacy crisis at the core. And once that becomes the conversation, everything changes. So I want to hear from you. Do you believe that this communist regime in Cuba can reform itself? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments and share this video with someone who still thinks that communism only fails in theory. And if you want more America First reporting the corporate media won't touch, subscribe, turn on your notifications right now. But most importantly, you see that secret number I've posted on the screen right there? Thousands of patriots have already texted the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. They're getting the notifications that they're hoping YouTube would send. But they're getting them from me. They're not waiting for the algorithm to determine what's good for you. Because you're here for a reason and you want the truth. I will not let you down. I will give you the truth every single night. A simple text message right to your phone from me. Celebrate America 250 with us, would you? Check out the merch shelf below this video and let's celebrate together.
The system controls information. Information control is power.
They don't want you to see this.
The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.
talking about. He's a friend of mine. He's a good man. I hate to say it because the press goes and they say, "Oh, we called him a good man." He is a good. He's for China. I'm for the USA. You know, it's like one of those things. But we do very well now with China. When I came here, we're not doing well with China. My first term, when I inherited that, it was like what China was doing to us was incredible. I don't blame China. They took advantage of stupid people, really stupid people. So we're doing great. But the phrase "Make America Great Again," that's all I want. Very simple phrase to think of. And I think it's the greatest in the history. I would say that's probably the greatest phrase in the history of the world, not only here. There's never been anything like it. Make America great again. That's what I've done. And we made it great. In fact, in a way, I want to use it because I would never give it up. MAGA, it's too good. It's too good. It really is the Republican Party. That's why we're doing so well. That's why we, if you look at the Republican Party from before I came till now, this is a much different party. It's a much bigger party. We have many, many more people. And I think the thought, the mind, the thought is much different than it was 10 years ago. It's been, it's amazing. A much more powerful party, much different party. And a much more impactful party. Thank you very much.
AI, 2 questions on Iran.
Go ahead.
First, you said last week that the U.S. would go in and dig out the buried nuclear material in
with them.
With them.
Right.
Did Iran
That's possible.
actually agree to that?
Well, it depends on what day you're talking about. They did agree, and then sometimes they agreed. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's one of the things we talk about. It's very overrated. I'm the one that overrated it. I thought to me it was important. To other people it's not important because those beautiful B-2 right here, the B-2 bombers, they obliterated. You know, when CNN said maybe it was an obliteration, they knew, I mean, before the pilots even came back home, before anybody saw the site. But then the Atomic Energy Commission went, they said it was obliterated. And that stuff is buried underneath a mountain that virtually collapsed. It's very, very hard to get it. But nevertheless, I want to get it. We're the only ones, us and probably China are the only 2 countries that have the equipment where you can do that. So, yeah, I want to get it. We have, at different times, they've changed their mind a couple of times. But as it stands now, we will go in sometime in the not too distant future. It's very safe down there. You know, we have, with Space Force, we have cameras. Every angle of those 3 sites are being watched at all times. If anybody went there, we'll see exactly what's happening, and we'll blow it up a little bit further. But as far as getting it, is the B-2 bombers did a job like nobody's ever seen. In the night, with no moon, dead darkness, at 1 o'clock in the morning or so, they dropped those bombs, the biggest, just about as big a bomb as you can ever find, and it went down air chutes. It's hard to believe that they can do the technology. It followed a beam right into the air chutes, exploded. Very hard to get that material. But I still nevertheless want it. And I don't want to do it if we're in conflict. I don't want to put men in that kind of danger. I remember Jimmy Carter had some bad problems in Iran with the hostages. I don't want to ever put our people in that kind of danger. But when it's over, as of this moment, it's agreed that we will go in with them. We will get it, and we will destroy it. It will be destroyed.
And Mr. Sorry, I have a follow-up, Mr. President. My second question. Is it possible to get to a deal with Iran, whether to go in and do that or to open up the Strait of Hormuz without seeing an Israeli cessation of their hostilities in Lebanon?
I think it would. We're trying to separate it. I mean, look, it's a very different kind of a thing. We actually spoke with Hezbollah for the first time ever. We didn't know they spoke. And they agreed yesterday they're not going to shoot. Israel's not going to shoot. We're just going to see. But I'd like to separate it. I'd like to have it a separate thing because it is separate. But Israel, hey, look, they've been a great partner. Bibi Netanyahu's been, for me, a great partner. For other people, not so good. For me, he's been very good. We were very effective what we've done. And they needed us. They couldn't have done it without us. Couldn't have even come close. And they needed us. And they got us to help them with a real problem, because Iran was a real problem, a big problem, a worldwide problem, because they wouldn't have stopped with Israel. They would have blown up the Middle East. And you saw that by the rockets. All those rockets that went to the 5, mostly for the most part, the 5 countries outside of Israel, those rockets were aimed there before we hit them with the B-2 bombers. They were going to blow up the Middle East. They were going to blow up Israel, but they were going to blow up the Middle East. And I stopped it, and I'm very proud I stopped it. And we also stopped it in the first term when I terminated the Iran nuclear deal penned by Barack Hussein Obama. It was one of the dumbest deals I've ever seen. And this has no relation. I like these morons, these Democrats, D-U-M, Democrats, that go on television and say, oh, well, this is just like the Obama did. This is the exact opposite. This is no path to a nuclear weapon. That was a absolute path to a nuclear weapon that you couldn't have done anything about. This is the exact opposite. They gave billions and billions of dollars to Iran, including 1.7 billion put into a Boeing 757 with the seats taken out because there wasn't enough room if you left the seats, with 1.7 billion in cash taken from the banks in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and flown to Iran. 1.7 in green cash, and then tens of billions of dollars given to Iran by our government. Frankly, they picked the wrong country, but maybe we're going to be getting along with Iran. We're going to find out. You know, there is a good possibility, I think, because without the bombing, that wouldn't have worked. Without the blockade is the most powerful thing. I think the blockade maybe has more impact than the bombing has. But the blockade that we have, the naval blockade, is incredible. Now, one ship has gotten through, unless we wanted it to, and people respect it a lot, and we'll see. But, you know, there's a chance if this really worked out, they could rebuild. You know, it used to be a very, very good nation. You go back, I have friends that used to, old timers, they used to go there and they used to do well. They used to build and around. They built apartment houses and they built office buildings that are hard to believe, right? But there's a chance that maybe that comes back. But whether it comes back or not, I think we have a very powerful deal that we're negotiating. The exact opposite as the Obama deal. The Obama deal was a disgrace. It gave them a nuclear weapon. We do the exact thing. We, under our deal, they will never, ever have a nuclear weapon. One of the other things that happens, and this is important, but there's nothing more important than taking away the capability of a nuclear weapon from Iran.
Mr. President,
wait. But one of the other things that's important, and very important, is that immediately upon signing the Memorandum of Understanding, the Hormuz Strait will open. And it'll open up quickly, and we've already had our minesweepers there. You know, we're sweeping, as you probably have heard. And these are underwater minesweepers. They're great, amazing technology. They're underwater because usually when you're looking for mines, that usually means you have some dangerous characters out there. That's why. So we're underwater, but we've swept mines, and we've gotten most of them, we think. So, but the Hormuz Strait will open immediately upon signing. Now, that's subject to a couple of areas being cleaned out also of mines, which we don't think there are any. So it'll happen very quickly, and we'll take the southern route anyway. But immediately upon signing, we open up the Hormuz Strait.
Mr. President, just to clarify on what you said, excuse me, Mr. President, just to clarify on what you were asked earlier, is the $1.8 billion DOJ fund dead, or is it on hold?
It's, I'd have to ask the lawyers, I don't know. I know one thing, the weaponization. Are you talking about the weaponization fund?
Yeah, what's your
the weaponization fund, as far as I'm concerned, was a beautiful thing. It was something I didn't make it, but I heard that. I thought that was the greatest thing because people like you have abused our people so badly. The fake news like CNN, like the New York Times and like others have abused our people. Wait a minute, be quiet. Have abused our people so badly, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You used to be a conservative. She was a conservative from Alabama, can you believe it? But CNN, in particular, CNN does such false reporting. But now they have new ownership, so maybe it'll straighten it out. I doubt it, but it's hard to straighten garbage out. But CNN has abused, and others have abused so badly. People, these are people that are great people that were destroyed. Their families have been destroyed. Many suicides. They committed suicide. People that went there with love. They went there with love. You know, when I made that speech early in the day, tremendous crowd. I hate to say because they'll say, oh, I was wrong on the number, but I believe it's the largest crowd I've ever spoken to by twice. The biggest crowd, I think, bigger than the inaugurations, bigger than anything. And there was so much love and friendship. It was the most amazing thing. People were crying. They were like, wait a minute, let me finish. And those people have been abused by you and by others and by the politicians, by the Democrats. They're dumb people. They want to have open borders. They want to have transgender mutilization of your children. They want to have men playing in women's sports. They want to have high taxes. They turned down, they fought us on the tax bill, and they fought us because they want people to pay high taxes because they're crazy. There's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with you. It's a shame. Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
President, thank you so much. On communism, today you have some stirring words on communism.
I just wrote that. Did you like it? Did you think it was well written?
Well, certainly very meaningful to common Americans.
Well, I'd read it. Do you want to read it? Do you have it? You could read it. It's on Truth. I just wrote it. I just felt I've seen what's going on with communism, And I see this country. Read it. I'd love to have you think it.
You wrote that quote, communists always do well with the voters, or as they would say, the people in the early years. But in the end, the country, state, or city goes to hell. Great violence proceeds at levels never seen before, and the entity dissolves into poverty, squalor, and crime. Remember, breathtaking popularity first, and then guaranteed death and destruction.
Well, you see it happening with New York. You see it happening with Los Angeles and parts of California. And it's so easy, you know. I'd be the greatest in the world. Nobody would be as good as me. I'd give away everything. I could be the greatest. I would sell them. You're going to get free rent. You're going to get free houses. You're going to get free food. You're going to get free everything. But eventually that ends. And it leads to death, destruction, and squalor 100% of the time. When I watched New York, and, you know, I liked him very much. He stood right here, and he's been in the office a couple of times. The mayor of New York. I think he's a very nice person. And I don't know. He's a smart guy. I don't understand why he thinks it's okay for all these companies that pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes a year to leave. Because you're not going to have any tax base. And you're going to end up in hunger and squalor and death and destruction. I would be better than him if I wanted to go that route. Ladies and gentlemen, you no longer pay rent. You no longer have to pay interest on your mortgage. In fact, I'll end your mortgage. I'm going to cut everything. You're no longer going to have to pay for food. I'm going to give you a grocery store and I'm going to give you free food. You're no longer going to have, you're going to have the greatest life ever. Follow me, you're going to have the greatest life. And you know what? For a couple of years, that's such a powerful, I would be the best ever at giving it. Nobody would ever be. I had to sell free enterprise. Free enterprise is tougher to sell, but that's what's made our country great. And that's why it's great again now. If I didn't get elected, we wouldn't have a country. We really wouldn't have a country. This country would be finished. But I see what's happening in Los Angeles. I see what's happening in New York. Where I look at Chicago, you have a stupid governor, a dumb governor, a really dumb guy. I know him well. He's a failure in his family, Pritzker. I know the family. I was partners in a deal with them. I made a lot of money. They made money. We made a good partnership. But he was like an outcast in the family. He was a slob. And the mayor is a low IQ person. I mean, he's a stupid person in Chicago. Chicago has a case, a real chance to become great again. There's a case, great again. If we were allowed to do what we did in Washington or Memphis, you know, I was with the governor of Tennessee yesterday, and he said, I want to come in. He came in to thank me. I said, for what? He said, what you did for Memphis. Memphis, the crime is down about 72%. And it's going, he said it's like a different city. Washington is even more so. We started a little bit earlier. In Washington, you walk down the streets and people feel safe here again. It's a safe city. If I were, oh, by the way, in Louisiana, what I've done there is unbelievable. Because the governor, Jeff Landry, called. He said, you got to help me with New Orleans. We have a tremendous crime problem. And I sent in our really talented people, including National Guardsmen, and they did an unbelievable. They had the safest, they said they had the safest, we just ended about 3 weeks ago. They had the safest Mardi Gras they've ever had. I could do that in Chicago, but you have to have the support of a governor. You can't have a slob that says, you know, we don't want it. People get murdered, and he says it's fine. They lost 5 or 6 people last week, and they said, it's fine. They're not going to lose 5 or 6 people. And I would make Chicago so good and so safe. It's got potential. The longer it goes, the harder it is to fix. And San Francisco, we could do such a good job. My friend said, please let the mayor, he's a liberal guy, nice guy. I talked to him. He wants to make San Francisco good, and he's trying very hard. I said, look, I can do it much faster than you. Please let me have a time. I mean, I spoke to the mayor, and some very important people asked me to give him a chance because they'd like to see if he could do it. And he's doing okay, but I could do it much faster, much better. And we can remove, don't forget, 2% of your people create 90% of your crime. That's a great number because 2% of the people you can take care of. If it was 90% of the people, that's so good. But 2%. In Washington, right here in D.C., we removed close to 5,000 hard-line criminals. Many came in through the Biden open border. We removed them from Washington, D.C., and it's one of the reasons that we're so safe now. We have a great, beautiful place. Again, the fountains are almost all open. You're going to have the reflecting pool opened within hours. I mean, literally within hours. The water starts pouring in tonight. It's going to be beautiful. You haven't seen that since 1922. Think of that. 1922. It hasn't worked. Never worked. From the day they built it, it never worked. But you're going to see that. And people are all thanking me because Washington's beautiful again. The parks are open. We changed the grass. You know, grass has a life also. Like people, grass has a life. And that grass hasn't been changed in 70, 80 years. It died many times over. We have beautiful grass, beautiful parks, beautiful everything. We don't have people living on it. And Washington, D.C., in a matter of 14 months, Washington, D.C. is like a different place. People are coming here. You know, the restaurants are all going out of business, as you know, because you use the restaurants. And now the restaurants are hot. In fact, if anything, we don't have enough restaurant space. They're all reopening. It's become vibrant. It's a beautiful thing to watch, and I am honored that I've been able to do it to our nation's capital. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. 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 Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
A man has been arrested after trying to bring a bomb through security at Sacramento International Airport on Saturday. The DOJ says the suspect's bag also contained a knife and other blades, zip ties, a butane lighter, and 5 phones with tape covering the front camera. An FBI bomb tech determined the device was powerful enough to have damaged the plane's window. The suspect, 49-year-old Kamani Jones, allegedly has a history of paranoia and called the FBI 13 times this year, claiming he was being followed.
Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and today we're going to be discussing this relatively new study that proposes something not a lot of physicists considered before. Can space-time crystallize? In other words, can the space-time itself become crystal, thus potentially creating some really bizarre effects and, more importantly, solving a lot of mysteries in cosmology. And though this might sound very speculative and somewhat unusual, this is precisely what this new study by Christian Ecker, Florian Ecker, and Daniel Grumiller tries to tackle. And here, just to kind of, start, imagine a somewhat strange situation. You're watching a star collapse that should generally result in a supernova, but even though we expect this to become a black hole or a neutron star, for some reason this one star doesn't. It actually finds itself in a kind of a perfect middle ground. A state that's so precise that it seems to represent this threshold between becoming a black hole and still being a star. Or to be more precisely, exploding as a supernova. And so in this recent study, published in a Journal of Physics Review Letters, here the paper theoretically explores what happens at this boundary, with results suggesting that the fabric of the universe itself, space-time, actually begins to behave as a kind of a crystal. And that by itself produces additional effects. And so in this video, we're going to take a look at this study and its main propositions, and also how this study actually kind of solves certain problems that stumped physicists for decades. But we'll also discuss what a space-time crystal might be, and why this discovery matters for our understanding of cosmology, the Big Bang, and how maybe one day we might even be able to detect something like this somewhere out there. But because this is such a complex topic, let's define the terms first. And actually let's start with space-time. In our daily lives, we generally separate space and time. We think of them as two separate entities. But since the work of Albert Einstein and Hermann Minkowski, we now know for a fact that space-time is actually a single phenomenon. It's a single four-dimensional continuum. And it's not a static thing, it actually is flexible and can be curved by the presence of mass and energy, which is what we normally refer to as gravity. So basically gravity in this case is the curvature of space-time. Okay, what about crystals? Well, normally when we talk about crystallization, such as what you see here, the crystallization of citric acid, we're essentially talking about atoms and molecules arranging themselves into a highly organized repeating pattern. Basically a structure that's very easy to predict and that repeats itself over and over. But it repeats itself over and over in space. And so, in some sense, a space-time crystal is a kind of a similar idea, but instead of atoms repeating in space, it's actually the geometry of space-time itself that starts to create these repeated patterns. And I guess you can sort of imagine it as this. And this happens through something referred to as discrete self-similarity. And so basically, if you were to zoom in, you would see the same pattern of curvature repeating again and again. Kind of like a fractal that echoes both in time and in space in exactly the same way. Although for a three-dimensional human brain, it is extremely difficult to imagine. Although last year, scientists were able to create something like this that kind of mimics this space-time crystal. Here, this created a curvature in space and in time with an extremely similar pattern. And while for a very long time, scientists, and specifically physicists studying black holes, have known that these patterns seem to exist in the mathematics of the black hole formation. But they could only find these patterns using supercomputers. And these equations, known as Einstein field equations, are notoriously difficult to solve because they're nonlinear, where gravity seems to react to its own energy. And well, here the story starts in 1993. and specifically with the Canadian physicist Matthew Chukchuik, who discovered a phenomenon referred to as critical collapse. And so here, when matter, and specifically a certain types of massless matter described by certain equations, is turned to the exact threshold between dispersing into space and collapsing, it seems to enter an unusual intermediate state, with computer simulations showing that this threshold exhibits unusual discrete pulses, space-time pulses, that oscillate and repeat following a geometric rhythm. And because the geometry repeats itself at regular intervals, here physicists nicknamed this a space-time crystal. But for over 3 decades, finding the exact formula for this, and especially the exact explanation and description of how to make this, proved to be notoriously difficult because of nonlinear complexity of Einsteinian equations. Or basically because when it comes to gravity, trying to calculate things in 4 dimensions is exceptionally difficult. And while one of the main achievements in the study is basically finding a way to solve these equations analytically, essentially by using pen and paper and not supercomputers. And this is where this new technique known as large D expansion comes in. And the trick here is very clever. Instead of trying to solve the gravity in 4 dimensions, basically in real space-time, researchers looked at what happens if the universe had an extremely large number of dimensions represented by letter D. And surprisingly, in this limit, the equations simplify dramatically, allowing the calculations to progress very fast. And by solving the problem for a theoretical universe with, for example, 300 dimensions, they could then work backwards to find solutions that seems to work for 4-dimensional reality as well. And what they found was an infinite family of very specific solutions that describe how space-time crystallizes right at the moment a black hole is about to form. In other words, right at this point, space-time seems to create a perfect crystal. Okay, cool, but how does this explain anything, and what does any of this mean? Well, aside from this being a very interesting mathematical triumph, this has a massive implication for cosmology. And that's because in cosmology and in astrophysics, there are obviously these 2 main problems, or 2 main mysteries. First, how exactly did the universe start right before the Big Bang? And what happens inside black holes? And both of these concepts, as of today, rely on this idea of singularity, or this initial singularity that we think the universe potentially started with, and the black hole singularity that a lot of mass seems to condense into. Or basically this point where density and temperature seem to be infinite, but also don't really make sense in terms of actual reality, because we don't really think infinity should exist. And so technically the current laws of physics, especially general relativity, completely break down at this point. We don't actually have any physics to explain any of this. But this newly proposed space-time crystal potentially creates a solution for this naked singularity. In other words, we might have our first mathematical idea that can maybe explain what happens inside black holes, and of course, how the universe began. And by understanding these space-time crystals, we might also get closer to the theory of quantum gravity, basically a kind of a holy grail of modern astrophysics, an idea that might finally be able to directly connect quantum physics and general relativity, which are basically both extremely successful independently, but don't seem to have any connection between them. And to some extent, this study also potentially relates and even explains primordial black holes. Basically these hypothetical black holes that could have formed in the incredibly dense environment in the early universe, and black holes that could also maybe explain the phenomenon we refer to as dark matter. And so here, long before any stars existed, and when the universe was extremely compact and extremely hot, and even before it underwent a critical collapse, the whole universe could have been actually filled with these space-time crystals, some of which could have become primordial black holes. But as the universe transitioned from a more crystallized state into the state that it is today, these crystals collapsed into black holes, and everything else became expanding space-time. And in some sense, I guess you can kind of compare it to crystallized ice melting into water, or maybe even eventually becoming vapor. So this is essentially a kind of a transition between different phases. And since some of the recent observations from the James Webb have actually found unexpectedly large galaxies, enormous black holes, and even more black holes than we ever expected, some researchers now believe that primordial black holes might have been actually prevalent everywhere and might even have served as seeds for many different early galaxies to basically grow around, developing into galaxies we have today. In other words, here, assuming this is correct, it all started with the crystallized spacetime, which then transformed into something else with some of the crystals collapsing into black holes, and these black holes slowly acquiring more mass and more gas and becoming galaxies over time. Okay, well, theoretically this is obviously really interesting, but what about actual physical proof? Or basically, is there any way to prove any of this? Because right now this is all just a bunch of clever math. Well, the answer seems to be yes, and it seems to be in gravitational waves. And so basically here, when 2 black holes collide, And when they produce ripples in fabric of spacetime, there might be certain signs that we can detect over time. And so if this spacetime crystal hypothesis is correct, a lot of these merges should be producing certain types of echoes, representing slight repetitions in the gravitational wave signal that seems to happen at very specific intervals. But the problem is that, because they would have such a small amplitude, they would be actually pretty difficult to find. And while current detectors, such as LIGO and Virgo, even though they found quite a few black hole mergers, might actually not be sensitive enough to find these faint echoes for now. But because with time they always get upgraded and become even more sensitive, the next generation of detectors, and especially the project referred to as the Einstein telescope, will definitely have the necessary precision to discover some of these patterns. And so if these echoes and these patterns are discovered, they would definitely be the smoking gun for the crystallization of spacetime, confirming this hypothesis and essentially explaining what happens inside singularities, or to be more exact, how gravity behaves at these thresholds between black holes and exploding stars, and how some black holes potentially collapsed in order to form the mysterious dark matter. And this is of course a very interesting reminder that in just the last few decades, we've basically moved from seeing black holes as a kind of a chaotic, unpredictable event to seeing it as something that we can now understand, analyze, calculate, and even use to solve various mysteries. And in this case, in this study, by looking at the universe through the lens of many dimensions, researchers found a way to simplify some of the most complex equations in existence. And this research, once again, is not just about black holes, it is about the beginning of everything, that moment right before the Big Bang. And so if spacetime can crystallize, then the chaos of the Big Bang might have actually been a highly organized structure that we are only now just beginning to understand. But as always, we need more studies and more data before any conclusions can be made. Although in this case, the math is definitely intriguing. On that note, once we discover something else, we'll definitely come back and discuss this in some of the future videos. Until then, thank you for watching, subscribe, come back tomorrow to learn something else, support the channel on Patreon where you can find additional videos without any ads and can DM me directly, or by joining a channel membership that grants you early access. You can also support this channel by buying the Wonderful Person t-shirt in the description below. Stay wonderful, I'll see you tomorrow, and as always, bye bye.
Breaking news now at 11:30. An Orange County man and CEO of a tech company has been arrested on suspicion of illegally supplying equipment to Iran.
Rich Prickett is in Sky 5 now overhead his home in Newport Coast with more. Rich.
Yeah, it's an upscale neighborhood in a gated community off the coast of Newport Beach, and we can see federal law enforcement officers outside of the home. Look like they are confiscating some sort of evidence inside of the home. We've seen many officers going in and out. This was a search warrant and an arrest that took place this morning. A 63-year-old U.S. dual citizen, an Iranian national and CEO of an Iranian-based technology company was arrested this morning. Now he's being accused of supplying Iran with U.S. technology. Of course, we're getting more information throughout the day from federal officers, but again, a CEO of a tech company was arrested for supplying equipment to Iranians, and so he's going to be arraigned today. We'll get more information. You can see some of the law enforcement officers that are surrounding the home here. Again, this is in Newport Beach, where a U.S. Iranian national and CEO of a tech company was arrested earlier this morning. In Sky 5, I'm Rich Prickett. Send it back to you in Hollywood.
All of these UFO disclosures, there's a big drop Welcome to the Next News Network. Between the headlines, you are watching us live right now. We're broadcasting on all platforms. We're broadcasting on Next News on X, as well as Trump Daily Posts on X, YouTube, as well as Rumble. And also, now we've introduced Kick to the live stream, so you can catch us on all platforms. We've got a lot of news we're going to be getting to. But first, let's start with the White House rundown. Good evening. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, bringing you the latest White House news from the past 24 hours in partnership with our streaming ally, Trump Daily Posts. Tonight, the focus is unmistakable. President Trump used the Oval Office to press forward on border security, customs enforcement, federal accountability, and law and order, while also signaling continued movement in Iran talks. The biggest action came this afternoon with 2 executive orders and a renewed public safety push that the administration is presenting as More America First follow-through. From the Pool Report, Assistant to the President Will Scharf, he presented 2 executive orders to President Trump in the Oval. One order strengthens customs enforcement by tightening cargo reporting and targeted contraband, illegal goods, and duty and tariff evasion. The second order addresses personnel management and policymaking roles inside the federal government, aiming to make discipline and promotion decisions more effective in positions that shape administrative policy. The White House said that the president signed the executive order strengthening customs enforcement nationwide. The order directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to revise importer eligibility regulations within 180 days, require importers of record to maintain tangible domestic assets or bonding, provide more data to Customs and Border Protection, and prohibit foreign importers of record from filing informal entries. The administration says the goal is to close loopholes, protect lawful trade, promote transparency, and safeguard the domestic economy and American consumers. Now, the broader White House message today was that President Trump is preparing tougher customs rules with wider accountability push in Washington and a law and order push in the American cities. The administration is also highlighting a Department of Justice Models City initiative with $300 million in grants for a small number of cities willing to partner across local government to reduce violent crime, hire police, improve training and body camera use, support victims, and modernize public safety infrastructure. Applications are now open with a first phase deadline of September. And from the Pool Report, the press pool was called into the Oval shortly before 4 p.m. after the White House had kept the event details tightly held during the day. Moments later, the Pool reported that President Trump was speaking from the Resolute desk. The Pool note said that the topic included the reflecting pool, though fuller details were still developing at that moment. Now, also from the Pool reports, the president addressed reporters, discussed Iran negotiations, saying progress was and that a deal could potentially come by the weekend. He also said he would need to consult legal advisors on the status of the weaponization fund. And the Pool additionally noted that sharp criticism from the president directed at CNN and Caitlin Collins during a tense exchange. In a later Pool report with more of the president's remarks, President Trump said that the weaponization fund had been dropped following a ruling from what he called a radical left judge. On Iran, he said negotiations were continuing and stressed that any more memorandum of understanding meant Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. He also said the United States had carried out strikes on Iran, that Iran had struck Kuwait, that America's support had been crucial to Israel's efforts, and that he had spoken with Hezbollah in an effort to stop hostilities in Lebanon. Now, earlier in the day, according to the Pool report, correspondents were told that there were no public action came under Oval Office developments. Also from the Pool, there was just a simple routine lunch late. It was called about 1 o'clock. No expected announcements during that period. And according to the daily guidance, President Trump's day did begin with some executive time around 8 a.m., followed by Oval Office policy meetings at 11 and 2 p.m., and the 3 p.m. executive order signing, an additional 4:30 p.m. policy meeting, and a 7 p.m. Rose Garden Club dinner. All events were listed as closed press, and the in-town Pool call time was this morning, 9 a.m. A later Pool note then announced a routine dinner late until 6:30, signaling no further expected public updates before the evening schedule resumed. One Pool transmission circulated additional Iran, Israel, and weaponization fund quotes from the president, reinforcing that foreign policy remained part of the Oval Office question and answer session. Another Pool report described remarks at the Oval Office event, referenced comments from Rodney Scott and Peter Navarro about a coming customs order. As with all fast-moving Pool notes, those details are best read alongside the official White House materials that we were issued afterwards. But a final Pool note said the Oval Office event ended at 4:39 p.m. after the president took several questions, and the press pool was escorted out. So over the past 24 hours, the clearest takeaway is that this administration stayed active on the core priorities President Trump campaigned on: stronger enforcement at the border and ports of entry, more accountability inside the federal bureaucracy, continued pressure abroad, and a renewed emphasis on public safety right here at home. That's the latest on the White House Daily Rundown. Now, let's turn from Pennsylvania Avenue to the other major stories that are driving the day across the country and around the world. We've got a big lineup for you guys tonight, so thank you for joining us on this Between the Headlines live stream. Everybody's filing in. Great to see you here. Now, we've got some more information. We're still tracking all of these UFO disclosures. There's a big drop at the National Archives, which was unexpected. So we're going to get to that. We've got more information with respect to the Iran negotiations, that strike on Kuwait that I just mentioned, as well as a major arrest that happened right here domestically. That's really big breaking news right now. Of course, we're also going to be talking about the hearing on Capitol Hill, the committee with Marco Rubio. Trump derangement syndrome on full display in that hearing room, and Marco Rubio wasn't having any of it. We've also got more information on that pathogen that was smuggled into the United States. Arrests have been made. We have the details on that from the FBI. We're going to talk more about the UFC fight that is rapidly approaching and the continued beautification of Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, in the lead up to the 250th birthday of our great republic. Also, you guys may have seen some of this footage. Big questions surrounding what's going on in New York City. Maybe you've seen the strange people climbing out of manholes in the middle of the night. People are really trying to figure out what it is. Are they planting bombs? Are they treasure hunters? Has the FBI been notified? And what is the New York Police Department doing? What is Mayor Mamdani doing, if anything? So these are all the topics we'll be running down tonight. So thank you for joining us on this beautiful day, Wednesday, June 3rd. Need to just get out one quick text message here before we continue. Okay. All right, so yes, we are streaming live on all platforms, and we are also we're on Next News on X. We are at Trump Daily Posts on X, YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. We don't normally stream to Kick, but after some conversations with some of my advisors, they're like, you should probably just, what have you got to lose? Throw a stream up there too. So we're pushing out to that platform. But we do need to get into this first story of the evening to break down the latest in the UFO disclosure story. Any super chats? We do have one from Johnny Rodriguez. Thank you, Johnny, for dropping that $5. Much appreciated. Every penny adds up, and we certainly thank you for contributing. All right, let's get into it, Brian, with our first story of the evening. Tonight, the UFO story may have crossed a line that Washington can no longer control. We're not just talking about another blurry video, another wild podcast, or another anonymous leak dumped into the internet machine. We're talking about reported Air Force records appearing on National Archives servers, a public Capitol event with sworn whistleblower David Grush and members of Congress, and even a foreign intelligence service reportedly contacting a civilian witness after a major sighting. We've got the video. See, that's not just random noise. It looks like organization. It looks like pressure. The real question now is simple. Are the gatekeepers losing their grip? You see, for years, the establishment treated this subject like a joke until it was politically useful. Then hid behind classification, bureaucracy, and the same tired games Americans have come to expect from institutions that never want to admit what they knew and when they knew it. But now the pattern's changing. If 30 Air Force UFO-related records really are sitting inside National Archives systems, including Project Blue Book material, air intelligence histories, correspondence files, and a document titled The Estimate of the Situation, then this is bigger than a sighting. This is a window into what officials may have believed behind closed doors. And to that bipartisan coalition of lawmakers, including Tim Burchett, Anapolina Luna, Eric Burleson, and Jared Moskowitz standing with Grush on the Capitol steps next week, this stops being a fringe bit of chatter online. It becomes organized political action. And once official records, sworn testimony, intelligence, attention, and public pressure all converge, institutions that counted on silence start to sweat. And while we're talking about recognizing a trend before the crowd catches up, let me tell you about our friends at Noble Gold Investments. So if you could go back in time, let me ask you this. Before the world relied on oil and buy it, would you? Of course you would. Anyone would. So why aren't you buying silver right now? The people who recognized oil early didn't just make money, they got ahead of one of the biggest economic shifts in history. And today, a similar opportunity is unfolding with silver. You see, silver is more precious. It is more than a precious metal. It's a critical resource used in solar panels, electric vehicles, defense systems, AI infrastructure, and the manufacturing base that powers the future. Noble Gold Investments makes it easy to learn more and take action. Visit nextnewsgold.com right now. And depending on the qualifying purchase, you could receive a 1/10 ounce gold coin. Don't wait for hindsight to tell you what opportunity looked like today. Now back to the story, because what is happening in this disclosure push is really getting harder to dismiss by the day. See, here's the part that should really get your attention. It's no longer just about objects in the sky. The language around the story is getting stranger, broader, and more serious all at once. Members of Congress are now hearing claims involving non-human intelligence, consciousness telepathy, spirituality, transmedium movement, and even possible underwater activity off American shores. Whether every claim holds up or not, the conversation itself has moved. We have entered a phase where the fight is not over whether people are seeing something. The fight is over who has the records, who has the access, and who's been keeping quiet. So it looks like another UFO records drop may be closer than we thought. Skywatch Signal reports here. 30 Air Force records have just appeared on the National Archives servers, including Air Force Regulation 200-2, Project Blue Book material. The 4602 Second Air Intelligence Service Squadron histories, multiple UFO correspondence files, intelligence summaries, and something intriguingly titled Estimate of the Situation. If the documents are what they appear to be, we may finally be getting a clearer picture of how seriously the Air Force treated the UFO problem behind closed doors. The question now is whether there's anything in these files that they never expected the public to read. So, the Air Force UAP records now added to the National Archives, the history they hoped you'd never see. Just quiet, right? What have we been seeing? They've been doing these massive public dumps on the Department of War. Department of War.gov/aliens or whatever the website is. They've been very public about it. But now all of a sudden these files just show up in the archives. oh, by the way, here they go. Here you go, guys. And then, internet sleuths do what they do. Apparently it was a huge thanks to HM05 UAP, who posted all the links to the files for when they actually drop on their Substack. So, UFO Air Force records with UAPs now dropping. So the newly surfaced Air Force files raise the question that Washington hates. What did they know and when did they know it? Now, Congressman Eric Burleson says the story goes way beyond hardware into telepathy, religion, and claims witnesses brought straight into his office. Listen.
Right, and what I've learned is, Clayton, I unfortunately have to preface this with I don't necessarily espouse these beliefs. I'm just going to convey to you what I've been told by other people. Right. And the common tropes that I hear that really kind of are shocking are that people are able to, through some form of mental exercise, be able to call in UAP, non-human intelligence. There are events or people that have come to my office, have had active, discussions. In fact, I told one of them, I just called their bluff and said, all right, if you could do it, let's go do it right now. Let's go outside and you can call in a UAP and I'll call. And if it comes down, that'll make national news, right? Sadly, that did not happen. So, but that is probably one of the more shocking things is the number of people that tell me that they're able to use their consciousness to be able to call in some kind of craft. And sometimes these people profess to be Christians, some are not, which is interesting. The whole religious aspect just really keeps coming up in this topic. And so it really almost seems inescapable from spirituality and religion.
I know that's something that friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, he and I have talked about this at length, is the idea of the religious side of this, the angel side of this, and all of that. And I will say that the sort of the telepathy aspect of this story that you've been hearing is repeated countless times by people who've been in the secret space program, who are whistleblowers who've come forward in the secret space program. One of the reasons they've been chosen to be a part of the secret space program is because of that telepathy ability. They're at a higher level of consciousness.
A higher level of consciousness. So he lays out how strange it gets once the people get past the sanitized talking points. Now pressure moves to Capitol Hill, where David Grush and lawmakers are preparing a public push to force more UAP records out into the open. In a pivotal step towards UAP transparency, a bipartisan group of senior officials and civilians will gather at the U.S. Capitol Tuesday, June 9th at 1 p.m. to demand full disclosure. UAP whistleblower David Grush, a decorated former intelligence officer who testified under oath before Congress, will reveal specific evidence of UAP and non-human intelligence from classified programs. He will urge review and public release of these records balanced with legitimate national security needs.
ديفيد جراش
Major David Grush.
قال ديفيد جراش شهادة القائد السابق في جهاز الاستخبارات ديفيد جراش
Aerial phenomena นะคะก็คือเป็นปรากฏการณ์ที่ทางด้านของเดวิดกรัช
Nereden biri David Grush dö.
riskerar fängelse om man skulle dömas för.
congresso sobre OVNI
David Grush is un ex oficial de inteligencia. Esto se llama David Grush.
You can see this is going to be a worldwide event, and the coming Capitol push shows the fight isn't staying buried in a hearing room. One filmmaker says the federal machine and its private sector allies have spent years locking this down and still won't give the whole truth. In a new film, Accidental Truth explores the possibility of non-human intelligence and what comes next. The film director and producer Ron James discussed the evidence and the future of disclosure. Check this out from News Nation.
So you interviewed a variety of newsmakers, from whistleblowers like Lou Elizondo to lawmakers who've long pushed for disclosure. You said that the deeper you went into that world, the more you came to believe that the political process was in many ways a dead end. What do you mean?
Well, I think that this thing's been sequestered by government and private industry for years, and that we are not going to get the entire truth and the knowledge of this from a political process of disclosure.
Meaning
It's
not
going to
from
be part of the
Congress,
truth.
not from these hearings, not from the government releasing files?
From all of it, not from anything actually coming officially from government through this process or through announcements that come from the White House or anything else. They're never going to tell us the entire truth of everything that they know about this phenomenon.
Why not?
Well, there's just too much accountability, and there's too many things that blend into the power structure on the planet, religious philosophies and teachings, societal norms, that it's just too disruptive. And there's too many things that they've done over the past to cover it up that they can't tell us.
Is it also a national security issue? China and Russia might be reverse engineering UFO crash, wreckage.
That's a big part of it. The fact that a lot of this stuff has gone into private industry and resulted in technologies that we're using today and technologies we don't want anyone to know we have is also a big part of the secrecy.
And I would also add the energy aspect to that conversation. Because if there is, in fact, zero-point energy that these crafts are using, what does it do to the big oil companies and the fossil fuel market? So if the official gatekeepers are still hiding the ball, people start looking to raw sightings and witness footage next. This is wild. I had this translated for you guys, and this is really making waves today. A man in Brazil records eerie sounds of flashing disc over a remote ridge and says intelligence officials came calling afterward. Brazilian Mayak Leo films eerie sounds, calm animals, and a flashing disc-shaped object hovering over a remote ridge in Campo Largo, Brazil. Days later, he says ABIN reached out. Raw footage, real fear, one question, what was in the sky? Now, this is about 4 minutes. You can watch the whole thing. It is on our X channel. But we'll give you, I'll skip to the part that you really want to see. But the opening just kind of sets the stage for this guy.
All right, we're just fixing up here, right, guys? He won't go because of the Jaguar.
So this guy's out. Looks like he's making post holes in his backyard. He's got some...
Come on, Billy, let's go. Look.
He's got some wild animals he's concerned with.
Jesus, hear that? I'm gonna head inside and grab something, just to protect myself. The animals are just running loose. Guys, that is not a growl. Like a person choking, like, someone who's choking. Like this, like it was just like this, like heavy breathing, really heavy breathing. I don't know how to explain it, guys. I really don't know. Did you guys hear it right there in the audio? I'm not going down there, right? I'm not crazy. But it was like, like a person choking. Oh, guys, Jesus, something's happened here at the house that I'm...
Okay, so I'm going to skip to the point. Okay, so this is where it starts to get interesting.
But I think I found the source. Look right above the trees. Hold on, it won't focus. It is way too far. Look, see this? It's flashing a lot, guys. It's over the ridge. Look, see it there? Look over there. It's actually so beautiful, guys. I have no idea what that could be. Are you seeing this right now? Holy crap. Guys, what is that? Guys, I'm scared. Holy shit, what is that? My God. No way.
Okay, so
what's happening here? Did you see this? I'm going to record it again. Look,
so
it's right.
He goes on and he points out that it's hovering over the river, which is a very important point because what I'm about to reveal. Because the Brazil video here, strange enough on its own, but the story gets even hotter if the paperwork is real. An official-looking ABIN document appears to show Brazil's intelligence agency formally reaching out to the witness. So, new development in the Brazilian UFO sighting. The influencer recorded and posted the videos you just saw. Officially contacted by ABIN, Brazil's intelligence agency. The formal document issued by Agência Brasileira under the presidency of the Republic requests a meeting to discuss the incident, assure the witness's rights, and provide guidance on potential contacts with internal intelligence. Marks direct government engagement with the witness of the large disc-shaped object captured on May 31st of this year. So this is the alleged document. I'll bring it up larger for you so you can see it here. The official communication following his posting. So once an intelligence agency enters the picture, it stops looking like internet chatter, starts looking like a cover-up question. Meanwhile, Congressman Tim Burchett taking it a step further with a claim about possible underwater alien bases off America's coast. So there may be aliens stationed at 5 or 6 underwater bases off the U.S. coast, according to Representative Tim Burchett. So now back to the disclosure fight. David Grush set to speak on Capitol steps alongside lawmakers demanding those records.
Time next week, UFO whistleblower David Grush will be joined by a bipartisan group of lawmakers on the steps of the U.S. Capitol for what could be a pivotal step in the push for transparency around UFOs. Grush plans to discuss specific UFO evidence that he encountered during his time as an intelligence officer and why these records should be publicly released now.
So what does it all really mean? It means the disclosure movement is maturing from rumor culture into an organized campaign aimed directly at the institutions that have controlled this subject for decades. Sightings can be waved away, viral clips can be mocked, but archived Air Force records, sworn whistleblowers, lawmakers on the Capitol steps, and intelligence services engaging witnesses create a chain of pressure that is much harder to bury. And that's why this moment matters. The core issue is no longer do unexplained things exist. The core issue is whether governments and defense-connected power centers have kept material conclusions and evidence compartmentalized from the public. That wall starts cracking, the story changes forever. So Americans have watched the permanent bureaucracy hide facts, stall oversight, and treat the public like children for far too long. Under President Trump, there is a renewed expectation that government serves the people and not the other way around, and that spirit is exactly why this story is catching fire. If records are coming out, if lawmakers are stepping forward, and if whistleblowers are willing to stand in public again, then the old playbook of ridicule and delay may finally be failing. That does not mean every claim is true. It does mean the pressure for answers is real, it's organized, and it's growing. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to share this report, subscribe to our channel, and drop your take in the comments. Do you believe official institutions know far more about UFOs and non-human intelligence than they have admitted to the public? Yes or no? Let's have a conversation. And let's have you join the thousands of patriots who've already texted the words raw feed to that number on the screen, 844-840-4963. They're already bypassing the algorithm. They're getting the notifications that YouTube decides, well, you don't deserve. I won't fail you. Make sure you text the words raw feed to that number, and let's get you the news that you demand. And since we're celebrating America 250, celebrate with us. Check out the merch shelf below this video. Pick out something you like, because the 4th of July is just around the corner. All right, Disclosure Day is upon us. Where are we going from here? Okay, so we've covered our Air Force hidden records in the archives. That's bizarre. They just drop the records like no one's paying attention. Wow, they've been so public about the other disclosures. Anyway, let's move on to Iran, because what's going on there is absolutely wild. And what that big arrest today, we need to talk about that too. Okay, Brian, thank you for getting that White House report published for us. And let me just go ahead. I'm going to schedule this one out too so that you can make sure you get it up and ready to go today. We'll get that up at the 8, this last one, we'll get that up at the 8 o'clock hour. Yes, we'll do that. Perfect. Thank you, Brian. And then this one will go up at the 9 o'clock hour as well. Okay, but you're seeing it here first, folks, before it gets published anywhere. You're watching the Next News Network on X, Next News on X. You're watching us on Trump Daily Posts, as well as on YouTube and Rumble. And now we welcome our Kick viewers. Okay, so let's go into this next one, Brian. We need to see what's happening in Iran and let America know. Tonight, the Iran story changed again, and this time the message from President Trump is unmistakable. This is no longer Washington begging for talks, no longer some endless diplomatic treadmill, and no longer the old weak game fantasy where America signals hesitation and our enemies exploit it. The Trump administration is now talking like Iran has already lost the strategic contest, and the only question left is whether Tehran signs on the dotted line or gets crushed by the reality that it created. Add in missiles over Kuwait, drones in the Gulf, and an FBI arrest in California tied to Iran's military machine, and one thing becomes clear. This is now an ultimatum. And I'll tell you why this matters. See, President Trump just laid it out with brutal clarity. America can sign a deal with Iran or do it the other way. And in his words, that path would bring certainty. No delays, no nonsense, and no more games. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth backed that up by saying the president will only accept a great deal for America and for world security because after 47 years of terror, Trump is the one president willing to ensure Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. And then came the proof that pressure is not theoretical. Iran launched missiles and drones at Kuwait, damaging a civilian airport and killing at least one person. While CENTCOM says that U.S. air defenses knocked down additional waves aimed at American forces. That means negotiations are not replacing pressure. They're happening under pressure. And while the media tries to spin confusion, Secretary Rubio gave away the whole doctrine in one sentence. The United States government is not a charity, and we are not here to play social worker. We are here to win. Before we go any further, if you're serious about protecting your family and strengthening your body in stressful times, this is worth your attention. Now, you've probably seen the clip of Joe Rogan with Mel Gibson talking about people close to them who went through serious health struggles and saw dramatic turnarounds. Rogan brings up light-based therapies, working at the cellular level. Gibson says that plainly the stuff works, and that got my attention. In my own home, I watched something similar as my wife dealt with constant discomfort and anxiety, and finding practical tools mattered, and that's why I want to point you to Red Light Therapy from Jonathan Otto. If you've been curious, you can check out the interviews that I've done with Jonathan on the topic, or just jump to the end. Go to myredlight.com and see what's available. See, these devices are designed to support recovery, wellness, and daily resilience in a simple, non-invasive way. Use NNN25 for individual items or NNN30 for bundles. That's myredlight.com. Now back to the story, because what happened next inside the Trump administration's messaging tells you exactly where this is all headed. See, the biggest clue is not even the missiles, it's the language. Trump says Iran has no Navy, no Air Force, barely any soldiers, no real leadership, and an economy in collapse with 250% inflation. Anna Kelly added that Iran's enrichment facilities were bombed to smithereens in Operation Midnight Hammer, and its conventional shield was ripped apart in Operation Epic Fury. In other words, the White House is not talking like a side looking for leverage. It's talking like the leverage has already been achieved. And that changes everything as we pull up the receipts. Now here's President Trump. He says, I have to make a determination.
Now I have to make a determination. Do we sign a deal or we do it the other way? And the other way is not nice.
What will the other way achieve, though?
Certainty. It would be over. There wouldn't be any bullshit. There wouldn't be any talking. There wouldn't be any delays. There wouldn't be, but, I'd rather do it the nice way from a humanitarian standpoint.
Can you do it just with bombing? The other way?
You don't have to. We don't need boots on the ground now. Well, we did it. We wiped out much of their military with just bombing. We didn't put anybody on the ground. You don't want to do that. You're so far away.
President Trump, he is done with the BS. Made the choice plain. Take the deal or face force. Now his defense chief backs it up, saying the only deal on the table is one that permanently blocks Iran from getting a nuke. Here is the Secretary of War in Singapore.
Like I said, any deal that the president is willing to make, he's only going to make it if he believes it's a great deal for our country and the security of the world. And only one president was willing to lay it out on the line and ensure after 47 years that Iran is not capable of having a nuclear weapon. And so you saw it in how he's been talking about it publicly. Those goalposts haven't shifted at all, which is the expectation of the American people and what we've stated to Iran. So in the middle of negotiations, the closer they come to that reality, both now and into the future, the closer we're going to get to that kind of a deal. And I also, having been in the room with him, I know he means it when he looks in the camera in the cabinet room and said they can either do this now through a deal, and we think we're in a good place to make that deal, or they can deal with the War Department. And we are prepared. We're postured even stronger today than we were on day one to address it that way if we have to, but he'd prefer not to. So Iran knows very, very clearly what our expectations are, and that's on the negotiating team to deliver. They're coming in our direction. The talks have been productive. I think they know where it needs to go, and I'm quite confident with our president who makes nothing but great deals, that ultimately it'll be something he's proud to defend, that ensures that Iran, which everyone knows should not have a nuclear weapon, never does.
Secretary Ansbro, one more question.
So, the Pentagon making it clear the goalposts haven't moved. You can either deal with Trump or the Department of War. You choose. Marco Rubio now boiling down the whole doctrine to this one simple line.
I also remind everybody the United States government is not a charity. We are not here to play social worker. We are here to win. We are here to win on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the national interest. To win for our country, to win for the people of America, to win for the things that are important for our future. And that's what we exist to do.
So Rubio says the mission is victory, not lectures from the swamp. Next shows the military side of the message with Trump's team warning Iran they can negotiate across the table or answer to American firepower. Here's more from the Secretary of War with the troops.
And when you do your job, the adversaries know what's coming for them. And that's when they either step up and meet the fury of the American military or back down, and you create a whole bunch of options for America and the president with what he wants to execute on behalf of the American people. So right now, hey, Iran has a choice. Meet at the table with the president and give up their nuclear program. And as the president said, I'm lost on time, 2 days ago now, in the cabinet meeting, I'm sitting right next to him. He looks in the camera and says, well, Iran can either do it the right way, with a deal, across the table, or they can deal with my guy on the left. That happened to be me. But it's not me, it's you guys. It's what you're ready to do. It's what the...
So the White House is talking peace through strength. Meanwhile, back here at home, the Feds say one California CEO was allegedly helping the Iranian military with U.S. tech and cashing in big. Orange County Tech CEO's $35 million mansion raided by the FBI as he's arrested for selling U.S. tech to the Iranian military. Jamshid Ghomi, a dual citizen of the U.S. and Iran, was charged with conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Accused of selling computer hardware to the Iranian military for use in military and nuclear programs. He created elaborate schemes to hide the millions of dollars he's made from these transactions. Wow.
Breaking news right now to get to in Orange County. Stu up in Skyfox. Stu, what's going on?
Hey there, good morning. This is happening out here in the Newport Beach area, and it is very important. This is a federal FBI Department of Justice Joint Task Force taking somebody into custody who was described as a businessman with dual citizenship, Iranian and U.S. Now, this person is actually accused of selling secrets, basically nuclear secrets, to the Iranian government, and he also falsified documents to make that happen. He received a compensation of over $15 million that apparently helped fund this house that he's living living in here, out here in the Newport Beach. Right now, though, that person in custody without any incident. You can see a number of FBI and Department of Justice personnel still down there on scene, basically looking for more evidence for this. And apparently, he's going to be facing a judge later on this afternoon. Very quick indeed. If he's convicted, he could face up to 20 years in prison. Again, this person being taken into custody this morning, apparently selling secrets to the Iranian government. I'm Stu up in Skybox over Newport Beach, sending it back to you all in the studio.
All right, Stu, thank you.
So the arrest shows Iran's number doesn't stop overseas. Next, the White House unloads on Bloomberg for pushing a weak-kneed media spin, while officials say Iran's nuclear sites were hammered and talks are now about finishing the job. Anna Kelly, who works at the White House, was taking Bloomberg to task for saying that the risk that Iran is covertly pursuing nuclear weapons is higher today than before. Well, she said that suggesting that Iran can more capably produce a nuclear weapon with no functioning nuclear enrichment facilities or military defenses is an indescribably stupid take by Bloomberg Business. But that's probably why this, quote, reporter didn't bother to reach out to the White House for comment. The reality is that Iran's nuclear facilities were bombed to smithereens during Operation Midnight Hammer. And then the U.S. military limited Iran's conventional shield during Operation Epic Fury. Iran intended to use the shield to protect their nuclear program. Now the United States is currently engaged in negotiations to ensure any future nuclear threat posed by Iran is eliminated for good. So Bloomberg Business being taken to task by the White House comms team. So after this media smackdown, the story gets even more concrete. Fox follows with the DOJ's breaking headline on Jamshid Ghomi and the accusation he supplied equipment. So Fox writes, the California tech CEO arrested for allegedly supplying equipment to Iranian nuclear military programs, as according to the DOJ. So the federal case lands as the administration keeps tightening the screws. But over on Capitol Hill, the gloves come off. Scott Bessent today torching Democrat Ron Wyden in a brutal hearing room clash. Yes, he went there today. Listen to this. They're simply calling Bessent an assassin.
Let's be clear here. Nobody is interested in the ramblings of a capo in the most corrupt regime in American history. We want to get some facts about this deal. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I will ask my questions first today.
And we would like to hear what Adam Wyden and Jeffrey Epstein talked about. Your son's largest investment position was Rick's Cabaret. So did your son and Jeffrey Epstein talk about pole dancing as he begged him for money using your limited credibility?
Oh!
I'm going to proceed with my questions, and Mr. Secretary, I'm going to.
Man, when I saw that today, I said, I got to share that with everybody. We want to know about the deal. Well, we want to know about what your son did with Jeffrey Epstein. I was not expecting that today. I wasn't playing defense for a second. Staying in the same hearing fight, Rubio goes toe-to-toe with Gregory Meeks over whether Trump understood the economic risks before striking Iran.
Did you warn President Trump before the war in Iran began that this conflict would drive up costs on gas, food, travel, and shipment?
Yeah, I'll warn you right now. I don't do yes or no answers.
Yeah,
So
well, I only have 5 minutes. I know when you were the senator, you know
I
about
never
this
did yes or
business,
no answers
and I
to
know
people.
you're trying to go out so that you can run out my 5 minutes. That's a simple question.
Run out your 5 minutes. You're running out your 5 minutes.
Did you?
I don't do yes or no questions. You want to ask me a question? I'll answer.
I'm answering. You answer my question. It's my time. Did you?
Did I what?
Yes or no? Did you warn President Trump
president
before
was
the
fully-
Iran war began that this conflict would drive up costs on gas, food, travel, and shipment?
The president,
yes or no?
The president and the full administration was aware that there would be consequences to action. Consequences
Let
of
me
Iran
move
having
on.
a nuclear weapon were worse.
Did you warn him? Did you warn him that launching a war in Iran could result in the regime placing a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz?
All the risk factors were understood, but the most important risk
I
factor
just
was
want to know
Iran
if you did
cannot
your
have a
job.
nuclear
Did you
weapon.
warn him?
Iran
If you
cannot have
didn't
a
warn him,
nuclear
say
weapon.
yes. It's simple.
Everyone was aware of what Iran
Did
might
you
do in
warn him?
retaliation.
I'm asking you a second. Did you
Everyone
warn him?
was aware.
Don't
of
want to
what
answer that. Let
Iran
me ask
would
you the next
do.
question.
But the worst part
Did
is
you
that they
warn
can't
the
have a nuclear-
president that launching U.S. strikes against Iran would result in retaliatory attacks on U.S. allies, partners, and Americans living or working in the Middle East?
Everyone
yes or
understood
no?
what Iran would do in response.
Did you warn them?
We were prepared for any response that
You
they
warn-
came out with.
Okay.
We knew it.
Just want to make
but
sure.
they can't have a nuclear
So
weapon.
you said you warned them. Did you warn the president that the personal stock purchases in companies profiting from the war that he launched could present a conflict of interest.
I'm not aware of the president's stock purchases. I don't deal in that, and I don't even know what you're saying is true.
Democrats keep trying to corner Rubio with gotcha questions, and the story moves back to the battlefield where Iran's shaky ceasefire starts falling apart with fresh strikes on Kuwait and Bahrain in the U.S. response. Iran's ceasefire collapsing, and now they're paying the price. An already shaky truce took a major hit. Iran launching missiles and drones at Kuwait and Bahrain overnight, heavily damaging Kuwait's international airport. 1 dead, 60 wounded, all flights suspended. This was their, quote, response to actions in the Persian Gulf. Big mistake. Central Command confirming U.S. forces struck back hard, hitting Qasem Island. American air defense has also smoked multiple waves of Iranian drones headed towards our troops. 0 U.S. casualties. Trump is staying cool but firm.
Strain. Overnight, Iran fired fresh strikes at America's Gulf allies, including Kuwait, in response to the U.S. action in the Persian Gulf. The regime strikes heavily damaged Kuwait's international airport. Look at this. They killed 1 person, and now they have suspended all flights. Well, you can understand why if you look at your screen. Central Command says U.S. forces responded to the attack by launching strikes on Qasem Island near the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump, right now, is optimistic.
This is rapidly changing. We've dealt with Iran for 47 years, and they've killed many of our people, and they killed many people all over the world. The state sponsor of terror, #1 in the world, and it's rapidly evolving, and it's evolving good. It's going to be very good. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Lots of other good things are going to happen.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst is in the region. Trey.
Harris, good morning. Overnight, Iran attacked Kuwait and Bahrain with missiles and drones. At least 1 person was killed and more than 60 wounded. You can see here in this video significant damage caused to Kuwait's international airport. CENTCOM released a statement saying that an additional wave of Iranian drones attempting to attack U.S. forces in Kuwait failed to impact intended targets tonight. U.S. Central Command air defenses successfully downed multiple drones and ensured no American personnel or assets were harmed. The Iranian attacks were in response to U.S. strikes that targeted Qasem Island in the Persian Gulf, according to the IRGC.
So after the overnight attacks, Trump makes his case even more bluntly. He says Iran's military is gutted, leadership wiped out, the economy is crashing, and New York Times still pretends they're thriving.
This way, Iran has no navy. They have no air force. They have very few soldiers. They have no leadership. The leadership, the original leadership is wiped out. And as I said, the second leadership is wiped out. Some of the third leadership is wiped out. Their economy is crashing. They have 250% inflation. They have everything that you can have that's bad, they have. And then if you read the New York Times, you think they're doing fantastically. It's amazing. Now, our country, on the other hand, has the best stock market we've ever had. We have, with the exception of the oil for a short period of time because of the war. Other than that, we have very little inflation. The country is doing fantastically. We're leading the world. We have $18 trillion being invested in the country in just 11 months, whereas the past administration, Sleepy Joe, had less than $1 trillion, and we have $18 trillion, which is a record for any country anywhere in the world. The record was $3 trillion, and we have 18 coming into our country. That's 11 months.
And when will that be felt by people?
It's being felt
in
now.
Gas prices?
Well, you see it in construction jobs because factories are being built all over the country, auto plants, it's being built. We have more auto plants under construction now than we had during our prime, in terms of prime automobile.
Trump laying out how weak Tehran really is despite the spin. Now he opens another door, saying he may even meet with Iran's new Ayatollah face-to-face if that's what it takes to lock in the result.
So who's making the decisions?
Well, they say he is giving approval because that's the way it has been for a long, long time. His father and then him, I guess it's a succession. But we seem to be getting along quite well.
Would you like to meet him or meet any of the Iranians in person?
I've never thought of it, actually. It's a very good question. I'll think of it. Yeah, I'd like to meet him. I'd like to meet everybody. I'd like to meet him. We probably will meet at some point, depending on how it all works out.
Wow. Imagine that day. So even after threatening force, Trump is still leaving room for direct diplomacy. Next, he shifts to another pressure point, his call with Netanyahu.
Axios reported that you had a phone call with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, in which you were angry with him. You said, "Are you effing crazy? What are you effing doing? I helped you stay out of jail." Is that true? Did you speak to him in those terms?
I did. I wouldn't say angry. I was a little bit perturbed at his constantly fighting with Lebanon. At some point I said, "Bibi, we got to stop this. You got to stop it. But I have a very good relationship. We've done well together. He always says we could never have done it, but everybody knows that we could have never done it without the United States. But I've worked very well together. I like Bibi a lot, and I've worked very well with him. We had I'm a wartime president. He's a wartime prime minister. Very important part of the world, and I think we've done very well. We've gotten along very well together.
So Trump says he was perturbed, not hostile, but he clearly drew the line with Netanyahu. Bibi answering back, saying the two can clash in the morning and still act together by the afternoon.
So let's talk about the call that you had with him this week, which is getting a lot of attention. President confirmed that he said you're effing crazy. How did you react to that? What really happened in that call?
Well, I'm not going to get into details of our conversations. We've had thousands, a lot of them. And if you think this is a crisis, you should be in some other conversations. But we've always found a way. We have so many agreements. We agree on the main things. We want to get Iran, the nuclear program in Iran, finished. We want to make sure that Iran doesn't pose a threat to Israel, to the Middle East, to America, that it doesn't develop nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them, not only to Israel and to every capital in Europe, but to every city in the United States. That's our common goal. That's what we set out to do. And to expand the circle of peace, as the President and I did in the Abraham Accords together. So we have common goals. Sometimes we have, as in the best of families, you have these tactical disagreements. We always find a way to work them out. And we do so as great friends. We can disagree in the morning, and by the afternoon we have common action.
So I was going to say.
So Netanyahu's message is simple: tactical disagreements, same strategic target. Now we get a few words from CENTCOM on action, confirming Iranian drones aimed at U.S. forces. An additional wave of Iranian forces attempting to attack U.S. forces in Kuwait failed to impact intended targets tonight. U.S. Central Command air defenses successfully downed multiple drones and ensured no American personnel or assets were harmed. And they also say American defenses protected our troops, and they also step in again and blow up Tehran's lie. The damage at Kuwait's airport came from a U.S. interceptor. The claim from Iran was that Iran stated it did not attack a passenger terminal at Kuwait International Airport, and damage was instead caused by a U.S. missile interceptor. False. Iran struck the civilian airport with drones in a deliberate, calculated, and unjustified attack. And then we have this. CENTCOM enforcing the blockade, tracking commercial shipping, and choking off Iran's access to the water. A U.S. sailor aboard the USS Rafael Perlada observes the commercial vessel as the ship patrols the Arabian Sea while enforcing the U.S. blockade against Iran. As of June 3rd, CENTCOM forces have redirected 125 commercial vessels and disabled 6 to ensure compliance. So what does this all really mean? It means President Trump has moved the debate away from process and on to outcome. Not endless meetings, not fake progress, not another paper deal the regime can cheat on in secret. The key word now is certainty. A verifiable end to Iran's nuclear threat, or decisive action that makes the threat impossible. That's why Hegseth said Iran can either do it the right way across the table or deal with the American military. That's why Rubio refuses to dress this up as some humanitarian management project. That's why even Trump's comments on Netanyahu matter, because despite tactical disagreements, the U.S.-Israel strategic objective remains the same: finish Iran's nuclear program, lock in peace through strength, and leave the regime with one choice: comply or collapse. And then came the diplomatic warning shot that should make every American furious. Federal agents arrested California tech CEO Jamshid Ghomi, accusing him of helping funnel U.S. tech into Iranian military and nuclear programs, while allegedly living large in a $35 million mansion. That's exactly why this fight cannot be treated like some distant foreign policy debate. The regime's networks do not stop at the Persian Gulf. They reach into our markets, our tech sector, and our homeland. Under President Trump, that door is finally being slammed shut. The White House is projecting strength abroad, law enforcement is moving at home, and Democrats still look more interested in performative questioning than protecting the country. So here's the bottom line. Iran is being told to sign the deal on America's terms or face what comes next. So my question for you is, do you support President Trump taking a hard line on Iran? Yes or no? Drop your answer below. Share this report, and if you want more America First coverage every day, make sure you subscribe to the Next News Network. But better yet, see those words on the screen and that number? Text the words raw feed to 844-840-4963. That is how I stay connected with you when the algorithm decides otherwise, when the notifications that you rely on from YouTube never arrive. I will not fail you. I will send you a message every single night with the latest information that you need to make informed decisions. And I want you to celebrate America 250 with us. Would you do that? Do you want to? Check out the Next News merch shelf below this video and let's celebrate together. All right. Wow, that was a lot longer than I expected it to be. A lot of news in the Iran story as we get more information on that call with Netanyahu that we've been tracking for days, getting both sides of the story from Trump and Netanyahu themselves, and of course that attack in Kuwait and the Department of War saying, hey, you know, either you're going to deal with Trump or you're going to deal with us. So we got more news to get to tonight. We need to talk about, well, what happened in the hearing room on Capitol Hill today. And Kara Castronova, White House correspondent for Lindell TV, as I was doing my research today, I came across this clip, and I'm like, you know, and I text her. I said, Kara, way to go. I said, I can't believe you had that one in the queue to ask Dr. Oz at the briefing this week. And she said, you know, I didn't. It was just a question that just popped into my head. And it really set the stage for the entire event on Capitol Hill today. We're going to show you all the receipts. So I hope you're sitting down. Tonight, the real pandemic in Washington is not Ebola, it's not inflation, not even the latest media hoax. It's Trump derangement syndrome, and the symptoms are getting impossible to ignore. One reporter, Kara Castronova from Lindell TV, tried to turn that into a joke for Dr. Oz, and his answer lit up the room. Treating stupid is really hard. But here's the thing. What happened after that made the joke look less like comedy and more like a diagnosis. Because while President Trump is releasing health results, passing cognitive tests, and driving the America First agenda, Democrats are melting down in public. And the clips that we're about to show you connect in a way the corporate press does not want you to notice. Now, this matters because the Trump administration is making a very specific argument to the American people right now. The opposition is no longer centered on policy results or even basic seriousness. It's centered on hating Donald Trump so much that reality itself becomes optional. I mean, look at the contrast. Secretary Rubio goes before Congress at a critical moment for American foreign policy with major questions involving Iran, China, terrorism, borders, and global security. And what do the Democrats do? Sleep jokes. Shoot jokes, shouting, interruptions, storming out. One member unloads and leaves before Rubio can even answer. Another turns the Foreign Affairs Committee into a cable news insult segment. Rubio's response was simple and devastating. Is this a hearing or a circus? See, that question is bigger than a hearing. It goes to whether the anti-Trump movement has become so obsessive, so emotionally broken, that it can't even function as a governing force. And when that happens, Americans pay the price. Now, before we go further, I want you to pay attention. Because confusion is how broken systems keep control over your money. Because if you or someone in your family is on Medicare, this directly affects your wallet. Medicare is confusing by design. The mailers, the robocalls, the fine print, the commercials, it's all meant to keep you by design. One call, one advisor. They look at your doctors, your prescriptions, your needs, then help you compare plans clearly. Some people could save as much as $1,100 a year, and that's real money. So do not guess, and do not let the system box you in. Call Chapter at 910-728-4109. That's the number you see right there, and get help from someone as well. See, here's the part